So we're going to continue with the topic for the next few times we're talking. All experience is a story. And we're going to look at one of the definitions of story as an account of something, but not the whole truth.
We liked that definition, didn't we? That really fits with our perspective. And I was thinking about this yesterday, and I realized, well, we're going to the dictionary. We're looking to the experts in the dictionary. The dictionary is very expert. It actually tells us the definitions. Um, and so we're looking for more information. We're looking for other kinds of perspectives, really, but we don't stop there. We really tease apart, examine the definitions. We check them out. Does this definition fit? Do we want to go further with this one? Do we want to create a Dharma talk like today out of this one? And we see our biases, we see our leanings, but most importantly, we try to tie it back to the Dharma.
Right. So we're not trying to cut out experts or say that they're not important or that we all have to educate ourselves and look to other sources. It's just that that source has to then be integrated into our perspective and known more from the Dharma stories that
Right,
we cherish.
right, right. And we'll come back to that. So I think we've already been sort of saying this, but I love this language that Linda used this morning, that we try to trade up for better stories, not to be story free. And there is a view in meditation that certain meditative teachings that meditation should be free from these stories. But no, that's not our view. Our view is that we like to trade up for better stories.
I never traded baseball cards. I mean, that wasn't something that I ever did, but I was thinking of that. Like it's which ones do I want that help me understand my life better, help me understand life, and the other people in it. And that I really have been looking for better stories all my life that I can live in and that actually are realistic and can be a part of, my world.
Right. And as you are alluding to, it's not like looking for the absolute story, absolute truth. No. It's more about, like you said, stories that help you in your life, stories that lead to more caring, more connection, more feeling freer of the things that really plague and disturb us. And that was when I first heard the Dharma at my first meditation retreat in 1978. I knew that this story that the teachers were telling, the Dharma, that is, I could feel the freedom in it,
Right.
and that it was
Right.
really speaking to my existential understanding of things
Right.
from
Well,
experience.
yes, from your own experience. And I was also thinking the stories that I've heard in Buddhism, the teachings that contained in it, do have a hero. And this is very common with stories. There's going to be a hero, somebody that travails, somebody that has overcome something. And the Buddha has been talked about as a hero in all of the stories around Buddhism and around the teachings. And we love those kind of stories. Those are very evocative and we're drawn to them.
And maybe we need heroes to slog our way through life.
Yes.
However, there's problems with it too.
Right. And and it creates a fair amount of certainty um, of the hero's story, and then we can often miss, our own story within how we're looking at the hero or how we're taking it in to the meaning that we make is really what I'm trying to get at.
Right. And our own story that usually has uh, baby steps rather than giant steps
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
development, right?
Yeah.
And
Right.
so, when we have this view that we should be able to jump to out there, well, that leads to a lot of spiritual bypassing, for one thing.
Right. Well, part of why, I mean, we're talking about this and it's this idea that if we can narrate our own stories to ourselves, if we can start to actually imagine talking to talking to others about the stories we have, this is where, Nellie, you were talking about, this is where some of the holes get exposed.
Right. And I do a fair amount of that in both my life and in my meditation. I came up with this idea because in my meditation recently, and I can't remember the content at all. I would have to go back to my journal, but I was narrating to you, Linda, and you were a wise voice in my own head, helping me with whatever I was narrating to you. Now I don't
Right.
know it. But and helping me see some of the holes in my story. That's what you were actually doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what I feel like we need to do for, develop this ability. We tell ourselves stories and then to see some of the holes in those
Right.
stories.
Well, and I was probably pretty kind
You
in your
were, you were.
this is part of looking at like who we're going to be telling these to, because sometimes I tell stories to people who are much more critical of me, or um, basically take me into I'm more down on myself, or I've got to improve this or be a better person. Um, and not that kindness won't lead us in, a better direction, but we are looking to develop a community of people, of listening to each other's stories and finding holes. It's a lot less, um, I don't know, vulnerable that way.
Right. And I think that being kind when you talk to, so I was talking to myself in my meditation, which is really, I can make you whoever I want in my mind. So that work can work times. But at any rate, oh gosh, I forgot where I was going. You go next.
Okay, well, we create these stories and we get to know them, from our meditation, and that we're really saying that all stories have holes in them. Just like all experience is a story, we're going to say that all stories have holes in them, and we just try to see the holes so we can let in a little bit more light, so we can feel more understanding when we find another piece, and how it's a kind of a happy thing to find a hole in a story rather than a shameful thing. That's what I was trying to say.
Yes, and that is well said. I mean, exactly, because that's really what we're cultivating. Like, that's the path of wisdom for us. Like, being able to, like you said, trade up our stories, make stories that are better, better for us, kinder to ourselves, kinder to others, not with shame, kind of not
Hmm.
shameless, but, not mostly that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. And you had a story that you were telling yourself about your neighbor. I
Right.
thought that was interesting.
Yeah, so we're going to the Friday meditation group, the Elephants, and we're walking up the steps, and the gal across the street has the for sale sign, those for sale signs for her house. They're right, it's a longer story, but right next door to her house, sort of right across the street also from Pine Street Sangha, is going to be a pod village where they have 30 of these little tiny houses for people who are unhoused and provide services, etc., to help them get a job and become housed. However, she does not like it being next door to her, literally. And so I made up a story that that's why she was selling. And I realized as soon as well, not as soon as, but very quickly, like a number of steps further, walking up the front steps. I don't know that. I
Hmm.
don't know why
Hmm.
she's selling, but I made up a
Yeah,
story and it's based on something. I have
right,
this information about her, but
right.
it was a story and it really did, it pleasured me to say, oh, I don't know. It sort of opened
Yeah,
things up.
yeah, yeah. I think even us talking about this and bringing it in as a topic has made me more conscious of the way I project my stories onto other people, or what am actually saying. Kind of jumping from your story going to my story of being at the border, crossing the border into Mexico this weekend, and how sitting in my car for 2 hours and having people come up and ask for money, and the children that were there, and the older people, and the handicapped, and just the stories that I was telling myself, like I just couldn't help myself. Um, And yet there was no way to check it out. I couldn't kind of go up and ask the little boy that was asking me for money, what his life was like, but I projected a whole world onto him.
Well, and that's also a really good point in terms of conditionality. You were sitting in the car for 2 hours. So in this enclosed place, the car, without feedback from outside
Right,
the car, and
right.
for a long time where your mind probably,
Yeah,
was needing
yeah,
some
yeah.
food, so for stories, so to speak. And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, we do this all the time. And so we're just suggesting be aware of the stories. And rather than imagine you could be story free, because that's just another story. So be aware of the stories and see what they lead to.
And some of the holes in them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I will do the bells. I think we'll end the meditation here. I'll do the bells this morning. I don't see anybody new on the call, so